Yeah, the singer just committed suicide last week. And it's not, well, you know what? It never fails.
No, it always fails.
It always fails. It always fails at the wrong time. Okay, here we go. It always fails at the wrong time. Well, good morning, everybody. It's still this morning, right? Thank you for coming to this little presentation on suicide prevention and intervention. I've got a picture of my family right here. My name is Chaplain Don Brewer. I'm a chaplain in the Washington Army National Guard. And what I want to really kind of present and lay the foundation or groundwork for you in this presentation regarding suicide is from the standpoint of just regular people. Okay, so when I say regular people, how many counselors do we have in this room? All right, oh, one. Good, all right, one. I was saying all right because the moral injury, I think you were just in the moral injury, it seemed to be half the room were counselors. So it could be easy from a counselor perspective and really kind of the way that we as Americans or Westerners approach problems is mainly from a formulaic or resource point of view, and I want to present it from a standpoint of just kind of a regular layperson point of view, okay? And that'll become clear as we go along. So I've got a big family. They're actually with me here in Wenatchee. Last time I was in Wenatchee was for a marriage retreat for the military when she was about 4, and she called Wenatchee Menatchee. So this is her first time back to Wenatchee. So I've been in the Guard for 27 years. I'm a little bit unique in that I'm a Guard baby, in that my dad was active duty Marines, flew A4s in the Marines. If you don't know what an A4 is, it's a fighter, bomber, jet. Those of you from my generation and before that love Top Gun, it was that little plane that they flew against in Top Gun. That was an A4 Skyhawk. So he was in the Marines, also in the Guard. I was a military brat and moved all over the place. And so I wanted to also be in the military, but I had a longing to really be home, be in one place. So that's why I joined the Guard. Then 9/11 happened and I've been all over the place. Might as well have been active duty. So I've been in the Guard for 27 years. Started out as an E1, 18-year-old or 17-year-old in 1989. Went to officer candidate school in 1995. Became an infantry officer, and then somewhere saw the light, or whatever you want to call it, and became a chaplain in 2007. So that's just a short and skinny of my short, or actually I'm one of the old guys now in the Army, being in for 27 years. So what's going on with suicide? So when I was a young infantry officer, I never even heard the word suicide until we had our mandatory suicide briefings, usually around Christmas time. And either I actually heard the word suicide because we had the mandatory suicide briefing, or I simply just signed a document that said I heard the briefing that I didn't really hear as far as check the block kind of training, okay? And I've seen an incredible shift in the military, in our culture, over the course of almost 3 decades now. And I want to talk about that shift. So worldview. How many of you were just at the talk about moral injury? Okay, good. So a good portion of you. I almost gave a little plug in there at the end. I didn't want to interrupt Carl in there about kind of extending the conversation about, and I'm going to use the word connection as it pertains to relationship. Okay, I'm going to push that aside here for a second. But I want to talk about worldview and laying the groundwork for addressing suicide. So worldview, and I talk about, well, first of all, when I say worldview, this isn't a quiz question. What comes to mind when I say worldview?
Overall picture.
Overall picture of what?
The big picture.
Okay. Anything else?
Multinational.
Multinational? Okay.
Cultural.
Cultural?
Where I fit in.
Where I fit in? Okay, it is, can be, all of those things. When I say the word, I like to ask because, when I say a word, you guys all can be thinking of something similar, but maybe different. Worldview, as I'm presenting it this morning, is, half of you are wearing glasses. In your minds, in your hearts, we each individually and somewhat collectively, but individually, you look at the world through a lens, okay? You understand the world. You understand people. You understand experiences. It all comes from your worldview. It's your belief system. It's your experiences. It's everything, okay? So when I say worldview, purpose, direction, and motivation, how you fit in, how you see the world, how you understand your experiences, it changes from generation to generation. Now, that's both individually and collectively. When I say collectively, I mean kind of culturally. And what I have seen now growing up in the military is really quite a change, which is not any different from generation to generation. Okay, so I'm not talking about anything that's unique over time. All right. I'm a preacher, so I've got to resist going on different tangents. Okay, so it changes from generation to generation. And something the way I want to present this is my grandpa, I'm the third, I'm Don Brewer the third. My grandpa is senior. He passed away about 2 years ago. He was a Pearl Harbor survivor. Young 17-year-old in the Coast Guard. I think he was 17. He might have lied about his age like most of them did. He died at the age of 92. But he's a Pearl Harbor survivor. And it's interesting, as I've become a chaplain, so early on as an infantry officer, hardly ever even heard of the word suicide. Matter of fact, my view of suicide was, if that presented itself in somebody, was, okay, hurry up and get it over with, hurry up and do it, or get on with it, move on, all right? Get over it already. That was the mentality. It was my mentality, and it was the mentality of my peers. And I'm 46, so I'm somewhat young. But that's the way I viewed suicide as a young man, as a young leader, which is obviously alarming. And I rarely saw circumstances that involved somebody struggling with suicide, all right? When I became a chaplain in 2007, for a period of about 5 years, I had a literal, well, it's figurative, but I say literal trail to my door, to my office as a chaplain, in which there would be lines of people, and the majority of those people, their issue was suicide. Okay? So extreme, so from very rarely, ever hearing about it, even seeing cases was rare, to fast forward to 2007 through really 2014. It still is a major issue. I'll talk about that in a second. It's slowed down as far as the numbers of people that I see, but especially during the height of the conflict that we had from, well, for me as a chaplain, 2007 to 2013. I mean, I was inundated with people, and suicide is something I dealt with on an hourly basis, okay? So this change happened in throughout generations. So as I kind of compared, as I was experiencing that, and I was comparing these young people that suicide was now an option, it seemed normal, it was, and I'll talk about the rational logic behind that. I compared it to the greatest generation, or the World War II generation. Compared it to my grandpa. So what do you guys think of when you see pictures like this of, posters of the World War II era? Think of, the greatest generation. What comes to mind?
My dad.
What's that? Your dad? Okay. And what characterizes your dad?
Integrity. He was solid. He was a rock. He was wearing much of that.
Solid, rock. Other words.
Strength.
Strength. Strong.
No emotion.
No emotion. And look, so here, I want to be careful with this. I'm not comparing generations as to who's better or who's worse. I'm not comparing generations as to, what, there's good and bad about all of them. Something, would you say no emotion? So there's good and bad to both, okay? It's easy to, as we're looking, we have the tendency, older generations have a tendency of looking at younger generations and doing what? Looking down on you, crinkled your nose, so that's really easy. And look, I'm in the midst of it, all right? I got a 9th grader that, I'll leave it at that. I've got a 9th grader. Same deal. I think his life is so easy, it's so great, and when he complains about anything, I can't handle it, okay? I am not a counselor to my 9th grader. I mean, even though I know I should be. So hard, strength, strong, they moved into, they dealt with, they were able to move into suffering, grief, death, that kind of thing. Like this says, they turned depression and war into prosperity and power. And what's the differences? When you look at the old generation, how are they different than ours? Not in the sense of strong strength and that kind of thing, but I mean as far as context of life. We had some Native Americans in the class yesterday. I'm a hunter-fisher guy. So again, I've tried to understand this from my own experience. And I think, okay, what was different about this generation? Being a hunter-fisher guy and what I know I experienced in the woods and what I really love to do and kind of some hard stuff. I think about 100 years ago, what was life like, generally speaking, for most people? They had to survive. And you go back 25 to 50 years from 100, and it's even harder, okay? So for the most part, they had to survive. And maybe they weren't, cutting skins off animals and stuff 100 years ago, but the majority of their day was spent working, not because they necessarily wanted to, but because that's the way life was. That's what they had to do. World War II generation, that's what they had to do. That's what they did. Okay? That doesn't mean that they dealt with suffering and grief and death in a good way, but they did deal with it. They survived in it. Okay? They had their own way of dealing with it. All right, now fast forward to today's generation. What's your impression of, and again, I want to be clear about this. I am not making fun. I mean, I do want to show this video that does, in essence, make fun of the millennial generation. I believe it was made by millennials, so, just to give that idea. But, so what's your view of the millennial generation? Just words, not
Self-entitlement.
okay? Self-entitlement? Lack of purpose. Again, I'm going to emphasize this, just because I got some feedback yesterday regarding this. Every generation has their flavor. And it is both good and bad. Okay? And I'll point this to, if you haven't read this article yet at a time, it's called the me generation. Millennials are lazy, entitled, narcissists who still live with their parents. But what does it say underneath that? You see it? Why they'll save us all. Okay, good and bad. But generally speaking, self-entitled, lazy. Any other words you want to use?
They're the smart ones.
They're smart? Okay, we just had this little interaction with the technology thing, okay? Peter, he's older than me. He's shuffling around trying to figure out the technology. Stress is getting, so get it. He didn't want to ask Jason to come in. Jason came in. You know what he did to fix the stuff? He just turned it on. Okay, he just turned the power button on. All right. Okay, guys, this is comedy. It is spoof. So just so you know that. Oh, good to see you.
Sound?
Yeah, hold on. It's going.
I was at church one day, and the speaker that day was different. I just sat there with tears in my eyes, learning about this ministry that was revolutionizing the planet. And I'm talking, of course, about Millennial International. The need is enormous. There are over 10 million millennials out there who have graduated with no work ethic, no job, no discernible skills at all, and they have expenses, housing,
Student loans.
credit card debt. And I didn't really realize the magnitude of the problem until I looked into the eyes of a millennial, and I saw that face with They're dead. Nothing's happening. After the service, and I talked to the guy, and he really informed me about the devastation that's not being able to fund the millennial lifestyle.
Core power yoga.
Birchbox for men. I looked over all the envelopes, and my heart was really touched when I saw this one particular fellow that I just had to get more information about him. He was Declan from Beverly Hills.
I am an aspiring photographer. I graduated college with an art degree, so obviously that puts me at a disadvantage.
Beard wax.
Spotify Premium.
In his last letter, he wrote to me and said that his weekend was, oh, how do you put it, totes lit fan. Literally have no idea what that is. My rescue call. A typical sponsorship program costs $29 a month. Millennial International is actually $2,900. But I see the need. It is so worth it.
Trunk Club subscription.
Essential oils.
Annual pilgrimage to Bethel Church.
It's the same as a traditional sponsorship program. So instead of giving, say, a soccer ball for his birthday, he's getting an Audi.
Am I capable of having a job? Sure, but I just feel like maybe employment right now would just kind of be stifling my creativity.
Through the sponsorship program, they actually set up a chance for us to meet each other in person. I brought him an apple pie that my wife had baked for him, but I totally forgot he's gluten-free.
I mean, obviously I've seen food in, so I don't eat the traditional meals like everybody else. For breakfast, I usually do like some kombucha juice.
He really didn't have much energy that week. It turns out, he was on a juice. I respect that. My wish for Declan, that he would realize his potential in life, that he would be better, achieve more.
I've been getting blue ribbons and participation trophies my whole life. What do you expect? For me, if it wasn't for the program, I'd have to get a job. Or worse, start a GoFundMe.
Many of these kids have traditional sponsorship programs fighting diseases like malaria, pneumonia, tuberculosis. And these millennials have the same struggle. Peanut allergies, pollen sensitivity, lactose intolerance. Kids in Africa are getting typhoid. Declan was recently diagnosed with tennis elbow. I was originally paying vision and eye care insurance for him, but it turns out his eyeglasses weren't good.
You guys get the picture. Now, again, the idea is not to make fun of the millennial generation. The idea here is to highlight that, and I want to make the point that they have a certain worldview, all right? The younger generation has a certain worldview. And as we approach, and you guys know this, the problem with suicide, especially as it pertains to veterans and military, is in what demographic? It's a problem in the whole demographic, but its main issue is in what demographic? It's in the millennial generation. So again, from my point of view, I can be looking at the typical 26 to 28-year-old white single male in the military where I can go, this guy has got everything he'd ever want. He's got excitement as far as his career. He's got all the money that you really need. He's got everything at his fingertips, but yet this guy wants to commit suicide? Okay, so from my worldview and my own stuff, I can have a hard time understanding that. I can have a hard time having compassion and empathy for that. Those are two worldviews clashing. Okay? So for you to understand that it doesn't necessarily matter. It matters what your view is. It matters what your belief system is. But for you to be, one of the big words now in counseling is this idea of self-awareness. For you to be able to be self-aware of your own biases, beliefs, your own worldview, and how it meshes or doesn't mesh with the people that you guys are serving. And you guys are serving a broad population of veterans, but the bulk of these veterans that are going to be coming to you are in what age bracket, for the most part? In this young age bracket. The Time article that I highly recommend the author writes this: the incidence of narcissistic personality disorder is nearly 3 times as high for people in their 20s as for the generation that's now 65 or older. According to the National Institutes of Health, when they're little, it seems cute to tell them that they're special, or a princess, or a rock star, or whatever their t-shirt says. When they're 14, it's no longer cute. All that self-esteem leads them to be disappointed when the world refuses to affirm how great they know they are. This generation has the highest likelihood of having unmet expectations with respect to their careers and the lowest levels of satisfaction. Yes, sir.
So is this kind of saying that when they're growing up that they don't go through disappointments a lot like we used to? Because, you know, like sports now, give everybody a trophy. So you don't feel like you got disappointed or you didn't, you know, you got a trophy. When you didn't get a trophy when I was growing up, you're like, God dang, I'm gonna try harder next year. So you knew what disappointment was and what failure was. And I think that as they're growing up, they're not knowing what failure is and how to react to those failures when they grow up.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Again, I can compare my grandpa's generation, and this isn't a plug for religion, but I will tell you, if you look back on the generation, generally speaking, that generation had a belief that involved a higher power, a God, some kind of a system in which they, again, that was part of their lens with which they were able to look at death, suffering, grief, hard things in life. Again, that could have been just from their mere survival, but they also had a general belief system that involved, if you picture it in a gigantic piece of, like a puzzle, they could see that their life was a piece. They had some kind of, not a perfect understanding, but some understanding of how that little piece of the puzzle fit in the gigantic piece, okay? The current generation, and the farther we get, this is interesting, again, I'll try not to go on a tangent. At my church, I'm currently going through a series that's talking about freedom. Freedom from an individual point of view, as we Americans love so much. That has been very good in the liberation of all kinds of repressed groups, countries, all kinds of great stuff from a democratic point of view. So individual freedom. However, we're talking about the conflict within individual freedom. So just picture this. We love this idea of individual freedom. That everybody in here, the idea is you can make your life whatever it is that you want to make your life. You can go be successful. You can do what you want. You can do it. Make yourself what you want to make yourself. Okay? That is good. And guess what it is? It's not necessarily true. Okay, I got a 7th grader who wants to be an NFL player. Can he strive as hard as he can to be an NFL player? He sure can try, right? But guess what the numbers say? Am I going to squash his desire to be that? Not necessarily. But you know what I am going to do? I'm going to try to help him have a balanced view of what is realistic. So this idea of individual freedom, I tie that together with this worldview. We are expanding on our understanding of and the belief of individual freedom. Reality is, hey, stuff still happens to me in life that I have no control over. So the idea that I can choose whatever I want, I can't choose the body that I want, that I'm born with. I can't choose the DNA. I can't choose that I'm going to be a 7-foot, guy that never has knee problems so that I have a chance to go to the NBA. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I don't choose, okay, that are in essence chosen for me. What I'm comparing with the World War II generation and the millennial generation is this idea that, hey, generally speaking, that collective group of people had an idea of how the small piece of the puzzle fit into the big piece, especially when bad stuff happened or hard stuff. The consistent or the common denominator that I have when I'm meeting with the young 20-year-old, the mid-20 that is struggling with suicide is they haven't thought through this idea of, wait a minute, how does my struggle right now, how does this death, how does this tragedy, how does this suffering that has totally rocked my world, how does this relationship difficulty, how does it fit in the bigger piece of the puzzle? Especially as our society gets more and more, I mean, think about it. We have a push-button society now in which immediate gratification can be had in almost everything, except one thing. And you know what that is? Suffering, involving relationships and everything else. So I can push a button to have food, to, you fill in the blank. It gives me immediate gratification, but when it comes to pain, there's nothing that I can push right away that gets rid of pain. So you've got to understand I'm approaching it from this view of this idea of worldview, that worldview is contributing to this. I think it's one of the main characteristics, and I'll talk about this a little bit. The current cultural quandary, talking about kind of immediate gratification. Usually I show the kind of intro video to this movie. Again, I have 4 little kids, so most of my little videos are cartoon movie videos. So have you guys seen this? So why do you think I put this up?
Because he's so happy and he says everything is awesome.
He is, I don't know if this is a word, naively
Yes,
happy.
yes.
The little intro video shows him doing all kinds of stuff, and he goes into what is Starbucks. He's there at the big, huge, long line of people. He gets his coffee, and the person says, that'll be $16. And the song is Everything is Awesome. And the song stops. Everybody's looking at him, and he goes, awesome! So this is what everybody portrays life to be now. Okay? On Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. Sure, you have the negative stuff too, but for the most part, what do people show as far as their life on social media? The good stuff. And for the most part, they're doing that because it's good. I mean, but we don't show the bad stuff. So they portray life as to what they want it to be, what they want people to see it to be. But there's an issue. Again, the cultural quandary is what? Life is hard. So the two, there's a struggle right here, okay, between the two. We portray life to be this certain thing, which is awesome, but yet the reality of life is this, and it says, after all, it kills you. Death is real, you can't avoid it. Life is hard. I usually like to show the John Wayne quote, life is hard, it's harder when you're stupid. That's because I was an infantry guy and I still am somewhat stupid. And life is hard for me. The risk factors, this is 2011, usually the really detailed compiled suicide statistics are a number of years late, but I thought this again showed this idea of the demographic that we're in, okay? The top is of the 915 active duty non-fatal, suicide attempts in 2011. It says 57% were under the age of 25, 75% were male, and you have the normal things that we know as far as relationship problems, behavioral disorders, misuse of drugs, alcohol. Of the 301 completed active duty suicides, and for those of you that I think that perhaps you know this, but if not, it's significant. Usually, especially with folks dealing with veterans, there's a presupposition that a person who is a combat vet, who has experienced really hard things in war, is more susceptible to suicide. That's not true. Actually, the majority of the people that have completed suicide had no combat experience at all. It's the same today. It's even more so today. This shows in 2011 had no history of deployments, so it separates deployment and combat experience. So this has 59% had no history of deployments to Iraq or Afghanistan. 82% of those who did deploy had no direct combat experience. Okay, so combat experience is not what makes a person particularly susceptible to suicide. Guess what it is? It's their perception of their reality. It's the lens through which they look at life with. Consistently, the young people that I'm dealing with that are struggling with suicide have no major situation in their life, from my point of view. I'm talking about death, cancer, some kind of physical problem. It usually has something to do with relationship, a broken relationship, and their life just isn't where they thought it would be at this point in time. And therefore, they see no hope for the future. Again, they don't have necessarily a developed, and when I say developed, I don't know, none of us are perfect in our understanding of how our lives fit in the big scheme of things. I understand that even for me as a chaplain, and for me personally, I have an understanding and a belief system of what gives me hope even when stuff crashes. But I do believe that there can be the straw that breaks the camel's back even in my life, in which I'm still going to struggle and say, hey, this is hard to understand, and this hurts, okay? But typically speaking, for the millennial generation, they have no understanding of the bigger picture. And again, I'm talking generally speaking, okay? Not individually. Any questions or comments regarding that?
What about drugs, alcohol?
What about them?
I mean, are you seeing that a factor in the suicide for these young folks you come across? Or
It's usually always a factor because it's part of the snowball. Okay, so the snowball being, if you think of, again, however you view a person's suffering, their individual personal suffering, it goes in a snowball type downward motion. Okay, to where it is pain for them, whether that's physical or emotional pain, and they are trying to find ways to deal with that pain. They're trying to find ways to have hope for the future. They're trying to find ways to relieve the pain. So usually drugs and alcohol are always a part of it. I don't think I've ever seen and I wish that years ago I would have kept track of how many, but it's countless people that I've dealt with since 2007. And I think I can't remember any that didn't have some kind of issue with drugs and/or alcohol. So how do we fix it? This is where I am appealing to you in whatever capacity that you're in, both professionally, volunteer, or personal. Okay, as a lay person, as just a normal person, because this is how I really think suicide is going to get fixed. So try to think about this. Here's another issue that I've seen over the course, especially the last 5 years. There used to be very, little to no resources for, let's talk about the military veterans. Whereas now, what do we have?
Abundance.
Folks,
Crisis hotline. The hotline, we have the crisis hotline.
we have crisis hotline. We have all kinds of resources. Is it making a dent in suicides? You could give answers on both sides. Research is showing us no. We still have 22 veterans a day dying, right? So we haven't seen that curbed yet. So we have resources. We're always trying to develop more, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But something I was going to bring up in the moral injury class is that I think Americans especially, we are thinking of results all the time. We're trying to figure out, hey, what kind of resource can we